Hi, my name is Amanda,
And I'm Molly.
and we want to take a look at life before colonialism in paradise.
Exactly.
Compared to the other novels that we've read, authors usually portray colonialism in a more negative outlook by idealizing and romanticizing life before colonialism. These post colonial writers make imperialism seem so much more worse when it does actually come to an effect.
Exactly. So, just to kind of illustrate some of the things that Amanda was talking about, we can take a look at, let's say, in an antique land, because what that does is portrays life along the Indian Ocean before colonialism comes in this, like she said, idealistic view, and it introduces the idea of cosmopolitanism, which is this. I know Amanda and I discussed it. This really inclusive,
Yeah.
culture tolerant life where everyone was kind of one, and we had the exchange of ideas and the exchange along, with Indians and Arabs and all of these kind of inclusive ideals. And that's kind of more in line with what we learned and what we've read previously. And then, Amanda and I kind of immediately noticed when we were reading Paradise that Gurnah was definitely going to take a different approach. And I don't think that what he did was, um, you know, coming out for colonialism, and it's not like he was a proponent of it or that he was, fully celebrating it. But I think in him creating this story of Yusuf in, Tanzania, not as idealistic and discussing really harsh ideas and hard concepts like Arab slave trade and Yosef being in debt because of his father, or having to work in the house of Aziz because of his father. Um, he does kind of complicate the issues and, you know, discussions that come up in the context of what colonialism means in these kind of interior African nations and what it means for them. And Amanda and I really got into a discussion about, what is more effective, and is Gurnah coming out and saying, that colonialism is actually good because the atrocities of
Yeah.
what happened inside Africa is so bad, or is he just kind of providing a different lens to, approach colonialism? So Amanda and I kind of got into a discussion about what he was doing. So Amanda, I guess you can kind of say, how you kind of approached it.
Yeah, so it's almost as if Gurna highlights and he sort of serves these colonialistic and imperialistic narratives that surround the colonialism, just not through a glorified perspective. And on page 7 of the novel, you there was evidence that said Yusuf had heard the boys say that the Germans hanged people if they didn't work hard enough. So my side of the argument is that natives didn't favor the arrival of Europeans, and they didn't favor these new opportunities because Europeans, specifically the Germans, they oppressed East Africans and they took advantage of their powerlessness. And
Yeah.
relating this to Do Not Weep Child, it strongly reminds me of that novel because where Ngugi evokes the Mau Mau rebellion, he mentions how the British colonized these East Africans and even Africans in general. Also, the strict power and these inhumane measures that the British took against the Africans is a very unfortunate and sad example of how imperialism actually was.
Mm-hmm.
As the Europeans basically exploited social, economic, and the political inferiority, natives wholeheartedly despised these foreign powers.
Yeah. I
Because like
mean,
Molly, after all, in the end, colonizers, they only want one thing, and that's land.
yep. It's funny because as you were talking about this, I see in Paradise when they're talking about when the natives are talking about the Europeans, well, they reference the Germans as Europeans, and um, they're known by the Africans to be more ruthless and cruel than anyone else. So there's this quote in the novel that reads, "Everything is in turmoil. Those Europeans are very determined, and as they fight over the prosperity of the earth, they will crush all of us. You'd be a fool to think they are here to do anything that is good. And it isn't trade they're after, but the land itself and everything in it, including us." Um,
Exactly.
right. So it kind of just talks to what you're talking about.
Exactly. And in Paradise, it is a coming of age novel about Yusuf's journey. As he reaches adulthood, he becomes more aware of his oppression once he grows older. Um,
Yeah.
After all that
It,
time, he was oblivious to the truth, like surrounding his life in Tanzania.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah,
that kind of talks to the other side of this debate, which is that, of course, European colonialism is terrible and it affects the lives of so many, but like, why did Gurnah, depict African life so tragically even before colonialistic powers kind of came in? And I mean, I noticed it right from the beginning of the plot where it reads, "The boy first, his name was Yusuf, and he left his home suddenly during his 12th year. He remembered it was the season of drought. Unexpected flowers bloomed and died. Strange insects scuttled from under rocks and writhed to their deaths in the burning light." And I think when I read this, I just immediately thought that it was going to be foreshadowing towards the end of the novel because
definitely.
Yusuf, like you said, it is a coming of age, and he really does realize like what goes on in the nations of Africa, in the internal land there. And I mean, it's no secret. He literally starts as a slave. He's forced to pay back his father's debts. He's sees life around him. He meets Khalil, who's also a servant. Like, there's just this real negative depiction of life here with the African slave trade, with the way that they're treated. And that's before colonialism happens, that's before the Europeans invade. And I think that really talks about, the title of the story. It's undeniably, in my opinion, I really do think that Paradise is ironic, and it's alluding ironically to the preconceptions of Western tourists to the eastern coast of Africa. um, Everyone thinks that life there, and similar to what we said about the other novels, that life there is perfect and that it's this paradise, but the location is not much of a paradise for Yusuf at all. um, and symbolic of really historical East Africa always. He's a powerless pawn. He's subject to dominance by exploitive forces beyond his control. And it's not just the Europeans who can do this, but it's the Arabs as well who have this kind of harsh control over him. Um,
Yeah,
so that's definitely how I read it, and I'll talk about the ending in a minute. But I just wanted to get your thoughts kind of on that.
yeah. I really do agree with what you said. And I also want to mention that he also recognizes the various hierarchies throughout his society, the low class, the middle class, the high class. And his status, being the low class, does relate to his love life. Not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a love life, but to his affection or to
Yeah,
his
love
interest in
interest. Yes.
Amina, his love interest in Uncle Aziz's wife. And frankly, Uncle Aziz is his master in a way. It's his uh, the
No, yeah,
person that owns
it is.
him, basically,
Yeah,
yeah. And I feel like it connects a lot because Amina is low class too. She's a servant, and he's enslaved He's also a servant to Uncle Aziz, and when he realizes these commonalities and these similarities between him and Amina, he does find hope in something in Tanzania. He finds hope in like a positive aspect just by fantasizing about his potential love
Yeah.
with Amina. But after all, like, is this even enough? Is this interest even enough in Tanzania, in a place where he is hopeless?
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect transition towards the end of the novel, because really that's where we see this debate, at least for, Yosef,
Yeah,
come to an end. It's the first kind of decision that he makes that's his active choice. And what he does is he goes to the German colonists, he goes to the Europeans, he goes to those imperialistic
exactly.
forces and those imperialistic powers, which are so, you know, stigmatized in post-colonial literature. And I don't think that that's Gurnah like literally coming out and saying no, the European German
Yeah,
forces are good, but I think it does cause one to just take a deeper look into like the effects of life in Tanzania even before colonialism. And it definitely causes discussion about all kinds of ways in which people kind of insert their control, and whether it's in that very traditional, post-colonial lens of like imperialism, huge nations coming in. There also is a sense of complexity because we do have such internal struggle and strife within Tanzania itself in this story. And I think it's impressive of Gurnah to be able to kind of uncover those layers and those dimensions that, for me at least, totally enhanced the readings this semester and provided as a contrast to them.
yeah, yeah. And it was ironic, like you said, it was ironic because at the end, he doesn't stay with his natives. He turns against, like he turns to the colonizers.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I feel like that's very interesting on how we look at two sides of a
yeah,
story.
yes,
Yeah.
totally. And I think it was really interesting for Amanda and I to be able to like sit and discuss the novel and say like,
What?
okay, what were Gurnah's kind of motivations and intentions writing?
Yeah, like
So
what makes him different compared to the last authors we've read.
that was good. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And yeah, we hope that this
Yeah.
conversation was like enlightening and informative.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.